Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from IRSportsDaily.com. I am your host, Greg Flamong, and with me, as always, is Jamie Uyama, Jamie University. It is Thursday, March 30th, and we have a mailbag show, Jamie. We have a mailbag show. We put out the bat signal last night to the Irish Sports Daily listeners and or not listeners, subscribers, all those things, viewers, and we put it out there. And they gave us a lot of good stuff, Jamie, a lot of good questions. A lot of people talking about the birds at my house, which is very fun. People asking if I'm allergic to birds because I sniffle a lot, which drives me insane, by the way, that I do that. It's a nervous tick that I do a lot of the time. I don't even realize that I'm doing it. And a couple people mentioned it to me with regard to the Ian Book interview. When I listened back, I did notice it, and it drove me insane. Like, I was literally so angry for a large part of the day after, because it's really bugged me that I did that. So that's what we got today, Jamie. I'm very excited. Hopefully we got some slow trickle in, because Marcus Shrewsbury, very good planning on our part, Jamie. We got our live show going as Notre Dame introduces their new head basketball coach, Marcus Shrewsbury, who has said that it was his dream to coach at Notre Dame. Thinks you can win a national championship in basketball at Notre Dame, Jamie. So he's hitting all the fields. So that's very exciting. But yeah, we're gonna be doing mainly just a Q&A mailbag show, and it's gonna be a lot of fun. And so if you like what you hear, hit the like button, hit subscribe button, hit the notification bell. We have links to the podcast that's on Apple and Spotify and wherever you find your pods. We have links to that in the description below. But first, Jamie,
I just wanted to just say thanks to everyone. I've noticed, I looked on Spotify the other day and got a lot of 5-star reviews on there. So just want to say thanks to everyone for throwing out those 5 stars.
That's on Apple too. It's on Apple. There's a lot of good stuff there. Rajon, follow me to the like button. I like that. Rajon, that's really good. S. Gomez is here as always. And Westward Manor Films. All right, we'll get into those questions. But before we get into everything, I want to talk about our sponsor, ESQ Clothing, because they've got a new bamboo dress shirt, Jamie. And we have been sent one. We were supposed to wear them today, but it is freezing at my house. And wearing just the dress shirt, it might have gotten a little cold, a little inside baseball. And I've said it before, I record in my garage. And I leave the door open because it's better for the signal for the Wi-Fi, so that the video doesn't get all messed up. And so that's what I do. And it's very cold today. It's not supposed to be cold. It's been in the 70s. It's in the high 40s right now. So I don't want to freeze my butt off for an entire hour here. So we're gonna do it. It's supposed to warm up next week, so we'll do it next week and get the full review. But we're talking about the ESQ, the world's first bamboo dress shirt. It's crafted from high-quality bamboo fabric, softest and most comfortable shirt you'll ever put on. It's not only more sustainable than cotton, also feels cooler, has stretch, is odor, wrinkle-resistant, machine washable, Jamie. Save on the dry cleaning bill. You've seen ESQ's one-piece collar bamboo shirt on every photo of Marcus Freeman, and it's the perfect shirt for today's business meeting or heading out for a night out. For ISD listeners only, get 23% off for spring football from now until the Blue Gold game using ISD Spring. That's ISD Spring to get an exclusive 23% off the best dress shirt you'll ever wear. Check out ESQclothing.com and upgrade your shirt game, Jamie. Can't wait.
Incredibly comfortable.
Incredibly.
And I'm not someone who feels comfortable in a dress shirt very often. So I mean, I would wear it. It feels like t-shirt comfortable.
Yeah, it does. It really does. It's unbelievable. It wasn't a comfort thing. We're doing it. It's not. I needed to dress warmer today, so that's all it is. Rajon says he wishes he looked as good in a dress shirt as Marcus Freeman. Absolutely, in anything really.
Yeah.
All the hoodies that we can't buy. I wish we looked as good as Marcus Freeman in those things. But all right, so let's just jump right in. Let's get to the questions. We got a ton from ISD subscribers, so let's get to it. All right, here we go. CFB Hertz. Always ask good questions. Credit to CFB Hertz. I don't know if he's in the show just yet, but I love his questions, man. He does a great job. Which position group are you least confident in as of right now? How can they change your mind by the end of spring practice? I'll throw that to you first, Jamie.
I'd probably say safety. just because I think there's the most questions. It's like I don't think they're going to be bad at safety at all this year. I think they could at worst they'll be solid. But I don't know, how much better they're going to be than solid. And that's why I would say, because if I look at really kind of like where Notre Dame is at, like pretty much everywhere, like I think they're in a pretty good spot at a lot of positions. There's not a lot of like glaring weaknesses that you're like, oh, this is going to be a real problem. So I'd say safety because I think you need X Watts to be like, oh yeah, he's just took it even another step. And he looks like he's going to be a starter and like a really high level one for Notre Dame. And, without, you're probably not going to get contact from, Oklahoma State graduate transfer Thomas Harper this spring. So, and what you're going to get in DJ Brown. So you really need Ramon Henderson to really look like he's taken a significant step. I think that's important, right? And if he doesn't, then you're like, okay, well, what's the depth like there? And obviously, Adon Schuler's not taking contact either. So, what are you going to get? You don't know what you're going to get out of him. There's still questions there. So, and then Benjamin Minich, I don't expect to play as a freshman. I think he's got a bright future, but I don't expect him to play as a freshman. So, I think that's definitely like something where I'm like, okay, well, are they going to have to move someone? Is Henderson's going to step up? How good is X-Walks going to be? Those are like going to be big questions for me.
Yeah. I think that's fair. And I think Rajon agrees with you in the chat. He says safety over D-line because a screw up is likely more devastating. I think that's true. It definitely is. I mean, mess ups in the secondary, they create touchdowns, right? And that's not what you want. I do think it's I was going to say, and I am going to say defensive line, just because, especially on the interior, I feel like there's a lot of hoping, like there's Howard Cross and there's Riley Mills. Riley Mills fancies himself a defensive end, right? So we don't really know, how willing is he to be an inside guy, right? A dominant inside player, right? That's an open question. And I think we both like Howard Cross a lot, but it's like, is he someone who's going to take over games? Probably not. And then, beyond that, there's just kind of a lot of hoping, right? There's a lot of hoping that Gabriel Rubio takes a jump. There's hope that Aiden Anya can take a jump. There's hope that Tyson Ford can take a jump. Jason Anya, someone who's going to come up later. Like we're kind of hoping for that, but it's not based on anything. It's not based on evidence, right? I mean, those guys don't even have the flashes of someone like Ramon Henderson, and so at the safety spot. So that's where, and it's like DJ Brown, we know he'll be okay. Like he doesn't have like a ton of busts. Xavier Watts has never been a bust player, right? And I like Thomas Harper. He's got a lot of experience. So I do think there's a concern, like what if someone's hurt? Any of them really, and now you have a problem in the secondary. So that's where I can see. It's not like a terrible answer or anything, and you could probably sell me on it too. But for me, right at this point, it's the defensive line. And as far as how they can change my mind by the end of spring, they probably can't. Frankly, that's just the nature of spring, and that's okay, right? But I don't know that they can. Is there anything the safeties can do to kind of get you off that, Jamie?
Well, I just think if you're like Ramon Henderson, you can just see it, right? Like if you're like, oh, Ramon Henderson, he's a starter now. He's like a guy there, and you're like, oh, he's really like those flashes that you saw. That's becoming like more of a regular thing. Like that's something I think for me at safety, and I think with defensive tackle, the reason it easily probably would have been my like second pick too. So I mean, I don't disagree with you. And I do think, it is a different thing when you're going to see, because there's so many guys who are unproven. But I mean, I am encouraged by, some of the stuff that Prince Colley said about Jason Anya yesterday. I mean, we talked about him just last week, and the pictures of him and how he is. I wrote about him in 6 Thoughts today. I think it would be a pretty huge development. Like when you hear someone say like they can't block him, I'm like, sounds good. Like it sounds like he's doing a step.
Yeah,
And I
that's
thought,
great.
yeah, and I thought and I think one of the things too is that last year, and I knew he was still far away from playing because I think if you go back and like read my like practice report from the spring last year, you'll hear me say like he is still raw and he's still inconsistent and all this kind of stuff. But the one thing that wasn't inconsistent was his motor. Like he had the motor. And so when you're kind of putting together like some of like the physical traits that he has, and then you have the motor, and then obviously, you think with like a year on campus that he would have taken a step. So he's a guy I'm really excited to see and kind of see where he's at, because I think that really kind of opens stuff up. And also it not only does that, it pushes a guy like Gabriel Rubin to be like, I mean, if you're not taking a step, your spot's taken, right? Like, I think that's something that's important.
Yeah. All right. Well, Jason Anya is going to come up in a little bit because people are interested in reading about him. All right, Jamie, this is 2024 recruiting. Iris Bronx says, give us your realistic D-line, dream D-line class for 2024.
I mean, I think one of the things is Notre Dame has a chance to have a really great defensive line class again. They had a good defensive line class last year.
Yeah.
But I really think, it can be better this year. I think they're probably going to take 6 guys, and honestly, they might have to turn some guys down. Really, if they do well enough with the spring, they're having a ton of edge rushers that have visited or going to visit, and they have already guys who have official set for June. So I think they're in a good spot for a lot of these guys. But like realistically, like I mean, I would put Elijah rushing if I thought it was like, they had a realistic shot again. I mean, I'll wait till the summer before I would ever say anything. Like, let's see what happens if they're still in it, or if he's still going to take that bit. Like, who knows, right? So we'll see what happens then. But I would say Owen Waffle was obviously already in the class, a guy I really, really, really like. Justin Scott, I think it's realistic that they get him for sure. And TJ Lindsay inside. So if those are those are 3 guys you land inside, I mean, that's a really good trio of guys, right? And I know Lindsay has really, really liked his visit again. He's going to be up again on campus in April. Justin Scott was obviously just here. I think obviously the vibes are very good there. So I think it's realistic they land all 3 of those guys. And Lindsay, I definitely think is a 3 tech. And then outside with Darian Mayo's kind of like an inside outside guy. And I think he's super underrated. He's super long. Just a really, really like a guy who I could see. I have him graded as a 92. So like a top 150, top 200 guy right now, but I think he's going to be, I would be surprised if he isn't a top 100 guy, but by the end of the cycle, and he's coming up on a visit very soon. He might be even this weekend. I can't remember. He's coming up soon. He's visiting. Malaki Williams, who's also going to visit for the spring game. He's an edge that I have in the Fab 50. I think he has a big upside as a pass rusher. Really just outstanding athlete, just twitchy. So, I mean, if that guy's one of your Vipers, I think you're in a really good spot for him. And then I think Bryce Young, who obviously is the son of Bryant Young, and he's not just the son of Bryant Young. That's not why you're taking him. I think he's got like legit big time traits and a chance to be really, really good. And he's going to grow even more into his body. And really, like, I think he's a guy that I think has as high an upside as any of the guys really that they would take in the class. So that's 6 right there. And I didn't even get into like the Smith twins, who are, I think, on campus today for a multi-day visit, who I think are pretty good. They're pretty good prospects. I like both of them. One's a Viper, one's more of a 3 tech. Logan Thomas, who is a guy that just visited campus, who's like a Viper from Texas, who's got extremely high upside. He's got some physical development to do, but he's really twitchy, really long. Benedict Ume is another guy who's going to visit really soon, who's a Canadian kid who's been playing you know, in the Northeast. And he's another kind of like 3-tech hybrid type guy that I think like I would put TJ Lindsay above him, but I think, you know, he's a comparable prospect to that. And Jalen Harvey's another kid who's got a visit set for June that I really, really like. And there's probably like 3 or 4 more guys. Cole Mullins, another guy that I really like, I think, and is going to visit soon. So, man, I think this is a super deep defensive line class. I really like what Al Washington has done in terms of the offers that they have out there. And they seem to be getting a lot of these guys on campus, which is, you know, obviously a good sign. And now it's just all about closing them. But I think, you know, if you're getting guys on campus this spring right now, I would consider those guys kind of like realistic to have a shot at them. So, I mean, as of right now, if we're talking about dream D line class, I think it could be a really, really, really good defensive line class.
Might we see some guys kind of pop then soon? I mean, because there's a real numbers problem. I mean, you just listed like 10 people, you know, 11 people. I mean, at some point, especially on the edges, right? Like at some point, if you want a spot, like I don't know how they feel about like Bryce Young per se, but like if it seems like it could be kind of any day, really. He probably will visit again before he was to pop, but like if you're him, you got to be thinking like, look, I'm pretty sure it's Notre Dame. From his point of view, if he's thinking if he thinks it's pretty sure Notre Dame, he might have to get in just because they're, like you said, they're looking at so many other guys on the edge, and the longer you go, you bring more people in. And I don't know if someone like him would lose his spot, but at some point, because they got to get guys on the inside too. You know, it's not like those numbers aren't just for the edges, right? Like you got like you're after TJ Lindsay, you already have Owen Waffle. They want Justin Scott really bad, you know. So it's at some point, I feel like these guys, some of them are going to have like the Smith twins.
Yeah,
I feel like they need to. I don't want to say need. All right, that's not. That's me putting something on them that I don't know how they feel about it, but there might be some urgency on their side to just kind of say like, hey, maybe we just get this done.
Yeah. I think that's probably going to happen I think kind of like whoever the next domino is going to kind of force that. And obviously there's going to be some guys like, I mean, Justin Scott, they're going to just be like, if he's like, I got to take my time, and I think he's going to take officials, right? He said he's going to take officials in the summer. So they're not going to be like, Justin Scott, like, we need your answer now. Like, they're not going to be like that to him. But I definitely think with some of the edge guys, like, I could easily see with the Smith twins, not them saying this while they're on this visit right now, but say they have one of these other edge guys comes up in the spring and then commits. Then I think they kind of say to the Smith twins, like, okay, this is what's happening, right? Or like, you know, this is where they're at. And then all of a sudden it just changes, right? Because that's how it always works, right? There's guys who there's pecking orders for all these guys. So they're going to decide, you know, whether or not how much you're going to push for some of these other guys. And I mean, it's always a delicate balance because you don't want to like freeze somebody out, especially if you don't know somebody's in the boat or they haven't actually told you they're coming yet, right? So but I think you're right, Greg. That's going to happen. I would think in the next month, you're going to start seeing it's got to kind of take shape because there's just enough visits that are going on that you're going to kind of have an idea of how much you need going into June, right?
Yeah.
With all the officials.
Yeah, like the end of spring ball.
Yeah,
I would say. Really quickly, CFB Hertz asks, of the 6 guys you listed, how many of them would play at Georgia or Alabama?
I mean, I think all of them could. Like, I really do. Like, are they going to be like the top guys on Bama's list? Because Bama's got and Georgia. I mean, they have a better shot at some of the other guys that I got who are like top 50 kids, right? So, I mean, they're not going to. I mean, Bama's would, you know, they would be lower on the pecking order for some of those guys, right? But I certainly think like I mean, all those guys have that kind of talent where they could play at those schools. And I think, I mean, and really, if you're taking guys that are in your dream, in the dream class that aren't there, that can't play there, then it's like, well, what are you doing? You know, what's the point of this?
Yeah.
And I think really like all of those guys could, you know, realistically play at like those schools, the SEC schools, all of them, no matter where they're from.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to the next question. This is also from Iron Sprunks, and talking about what would Jason Anya's emergence as a rotational player mean for the defense?
I mean, I think it would be really big because I think, you know, we talked about, you just, you know, Greg, you mentioned it as one of the positions that, you know, probably like you're worried about the most heading into spring.
You need someone to step up, right?
Yeah,
someone has to step up, whether it's him or somebody else.
Yeah, you do. And I think right now, like if you just said on paper heading into the spring, you'd say, okay, we have Cross, we have Mills, and you got kind of throw 2.5 in there with Gabe Rubio, right? Because you think like Gabe Rubio, as long as he takes a step, and he obviously played last year, but I would say if he's got to take a step, right? He's got to take a step and become like kind of like what you expect with a lot of interior guys. He take another step, right? Each year, like a Heinisch did, right? He always took a step, right? So that's where, so let's just say you have 3 guys there. Well, you don't want to have 3 guys during the season because that means all of a sudden you got, if one guy gets hurt, you're in big trouble, right? You want to have 4 guys, you want to have 5 guys, really, right? So what would Jason Anya, I mean, it would be huge because then that's another guy you can rely on, right? And then if he becomes something more than that, where it's like he's actually pushing those guys too, because I mean, you talked about like Mills is the perfect example. Like Riley Mills is a freakish talent in terms of just being this monster, athletic, big guy. He's got an NFL frame. He's had practices at Notre Dame where you're like, man, this guy looks unblockable. Like he just was constantly in the backfield. He had that Virginia game, ironically the same game as the Ramon Henderson had his big flashes, where he got the game ball. He was awesome in that game, right? Like I think he had like 2.5 sacks in that game. He made a big difference. But I mean, he has always shown an ability to rush the passer, but it's like, can this guy be dominating against a run too? Because there's really no physical reason why he can't be as a 3 technique, right? And really, like, he should be a guy that you know, traits wise should be like a high pick in the NFL, not like a guy who's like, we're going to take him because we think we can unlock him. Like he should be a guy who has the ability to take that next step. So if you got a guy like Anya who's like, I'm breathing down your neck, or you say Anya is there and you're like, well, Anya is really taking a step at 1 tech, and it's like, okay, well if Mills isn't getting done, well now we can use Cross at 3 tech and whatever. So it really just kind of opens up everything you want to do. And it's one of those things where it's like Tyson Ford, he's not just getting default and put in the rotation because we need somebody, but he's not quite ready, but man, he's talented and whatever. It's like, no, you better be on it, Tyson, because if you're not, this guy's already coming to take your spot. Right. So, I think it's really, I mean, I think it could be huge. It could be like one of the biggest things for the defense, and especially at a spot where you have questions coming in.
Yep, that's it's something to track, especially for you. You're going to be there on Saturday, so it'll be something to check out. And you know, is that a real thing? Right? Yeah, it's going to be open question. Irvine Jack says, over the last 10 years, is this the year with more guys who could step up and dramatically change the team? It seems like it to me, but wanted to know your opinion. For me, I think that's especially true on some of these open positions, right? So like wide receiver, I think there's a couple guys who, you know, like Jaden Thomas, is he, like you say, like, is he emerging as the wide receiver 1? Does Tobias Merriweather take a big leap? Does Lorenzo Styles, you know, take a leap and, you know, kind of bounce back from last year? Deion Colsey, right? Can he reshape, you know, his body and the way he plays and then the receiver room altogether, you know? D-line. There's so many there's so many options. We just went over all of them. Linebacker, right? Prince Collie, could he make a leap? You know, he had some good quotes yesterday that Drew Mentok has up on the irishsportsdaily.com, so you can check that out. Could he do that? You know, and does he reshape the way that linebacker looks? You know, and something like that. So I do think that there is kind of like Xavier Watts at safety. You know, Ramon Henderson at safety. Could they take leaps? Right? Like those are the open questions there that maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. You know, but it's like if you get a guy at one of those positions, so maybe one of the linebackers and one of the wide receivers, and Xavier Watts at safety, it's like there's no reason. Jalen Sneed, right? Rajon, it's like a perfect example of like a super high upside, high ceiling guy who, if he becomes like a guy who's like, hey, we have to play him all the time. Jordan Botelho, right? I mean, he's another one. So that it's a good observation by Irvine Jack. Like, yeah, in my opinion, there are a ton of guys who could really just change the way we think about the team, especially defensively. So what were your thoughts on that?
I just think, I mean, that's the nature of college football, really, right? And you look at every great Notre Dame team, especially the ones that, or even really good ones that you maybe the expectations weren't going to be like a true contender.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can go all the way back to 1993, and I mean, the story for that season was they lost Bettis. They lost Meyer, or they lost Rick Meyer. They lost Reggie Brooks.
Entire backfield.
I mean, Bettis and Brooks was like, if not the best backfield in college football, it was like right up there.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, you know, Bettis was, I think, 10th overall, and Reggie Brooks was a second-round pick. They rushed for like 1 million yards each, and then obviously Meyer was a high pick too. So it's like, and then you obviously needed like a guy like Kevin McDougal's, Lee Becton. No one was like Lee Becton ready to become a star, and he was fantastic that 1993 season. And then obviously Ray Farmer as well. So
Ray
Zellers, excuse me. But I think one of those things too is like, that's just kind of, it needs to happen. It doesn't always happen, right? But it kind of needs to happen. I think you can even look at 2020, where it was kind of a weird year because 2018 was obviously like this great year for Notre Dame where they had a lot coming back, right? Mm-hmm. They had a lot coming back from that 2017 team that showed promise. And then all these guys kind of like just gradually stepped into these bigger roles and were even better, right? And that's one of the reasons why they went undefeated in the regular season and made it to the playoff. And then even 2019 had a ton of those guys that were part of that 2018, 2017 team. A lot of the core of that team were there. So it was different. But then 2020, it was like a much kind of different year, right? Where it's like, well, now Aquara and Kareem are gone. So it's like, well, Hayes, you know, he hasn't really lived up to expectation. And Ogundeji's shown flashes, but he hasn't been a starter yet. And they needed to be good. And they were good, right? Mm-hmm. And then you needed, you know, Jeremiah Wosu-Koromoa, like he was a guy that, you know, obviously was very good in 2019, but he took it to another level and became like a Butkus Award winner, right? So Kyron Williams, redshirt. No one was like, Kyron Williams is going to be a star. And they're like, maybe he can be the starter. No one was like, this guy's going to be like a difference maker, like phenomenal guy. And he was that. Javon McKinley literally like had like one, you know, good game in his career. He had like a New Mexico game or whatever, right? And then all of a sudden he was like in early in the year, didn't really do much. Then all of a sudden he becomes like this big time deep threat. And like, you know, in Skoranek, Tommy Tremble went from like this kind of like good piece to like, oh man, this invaluable like weapon in what he did with the running game. Michael Mayer, true freshman, instant impact, whatever, right? Like all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what it takes. I think, I don't know. So is that like this year more than that 2020 year in terms of like, I think it's just one of those things that's like almost every year, but you did list like a bunch of guys that I think could have a shot. And I mean, I think that's what always excites me about, you know, football, college football and Notre Dame football is that there's always that possibility, right? There's always that possibility. And I want to see that.
Yeah. I mean, I just think there's so many who are viable, you know, like there are a ton of numbers, and that really makes me feel like it's more likely to happen, just because if you're counting on a guy only, well, then the chances aren't great. Those are just the odds, no matter who it is. Whereas like now it's like you're talking like 2 or 3 guys at each position that we've discussed. The only one is safety. Like that's kind of dependent on someone like Xavier Watts and or Ramon Henderson, which is kind of the problem, right? Is like you don't have the numbers at that position that everyone else does, or that every other position has. And so that's the one where you get kind of squirrely. It's like, and then maybe that's why they're talking about bringing a transfer. You know, it's like we just need another shot at a really good player. So maybe that's why they're looking there. All right, moving on. XR ND 1994. For Notre Dame to make the playoffs this year, who is a player on offense and defense that has to have a big year for it to happen? Go ahead, Jamie.
I mean, I think it's obvious. You could just say the quarterback.
Well, let's offense, but I mean,
so that's what I was just gonna say. I was just gonna take. It's just way too easy to just say Sam Hartman or Tyler Buckner or whatever, right? Like it's just way too easy to say that. But I mean, I think it's got to be a receiver. It's got to be a receiver. So I mean, whether that's Jaden Thomas, Tobias Merriweather, Lorenzo Styles, Deion Colsey, whoever, right? Like it's got to be a receiver, right? It's got to be a receiver. And if it's probably multiple receivers, really, right? Like that's kind of where you need. But I think it's 100% number one with a bullet receiver, and then defense. I think. I mean, it's easy to say Botello. I think that's important, but I think it's even more important to get like one of those guys on the inside. If like Mills could be a game wrecker, right? If he could be like a true game wrecker, that would be massive, right?
Yeah.
On the other hand, Cam Hart. If Cam Hart is like, oh, he's like the better version of the guy that he was in 2021. Like he's just healthy, right? He's healthy. And then all of a sudden you get that. And then you have him and Benjamin Morrison. And then you have like 2 corners that are just like, you know, just legit like NFL guys there. You can do a lot of different things on defense, and your defense is going to take a jump just because of that. Right. So those are the guys for me.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned everybody. I was going to zero in defensively on Riley Mills. It's just such a big deal having someone on the interior. Like I think like Javonte Jean-Baptiste and Nana will be fine at the big end spot. Like I think they'll be good, right? How good will they be? I don't know, but I think they'll be good. I think Botelho on the other side will be good, and then whoever backs him up. I'm not super concerned about the edges. It's more the inside. Like, can a guy like Riley Mills, like you said, can he be a guy where it's like, hey, it's a problem. We can't deal with him. You know, like a Jerry Tillery had. Like Jerry Tillery.
I think Jerry Tillery in that 2018 season, that was the difference. Because and he was good in 2017. Obviously, he played 1 tech that year, and he was very good. He was very good there. But when they moved him to 3 tech, it was like, okay, well, is he going to be like this very disruptive? I know you see this person in the comments, just ignore them. But just whatever. Just get out of this. Come on, man. Sorry, everybody. I do think like him being there and being this guy who was like constantly disrupting the backfield, you know, taking over the Stanford game. Like that Stanford game was one of the best individual performances by a defensive lineman that Notre Dame has had in the past decade, right? It's up there. It's like 2 at second half against, USC in 2013 and the one Jerron Jones game in 2016 against Miami, where it was like this center just was on skates the whole time. Like those are the games that stand out. But like, and that was like at that point in the season, and obviously like, you know, Stanford kind of was probably overrated at the time, but that was a huge difference. And Tillery just even with his shoulder was banged up in the second half of the year, he still was a problem, right? And I think that really, really can make a huge difference.
Western Mariners Films. That's funny. I laughed at that. between cousin Luke and Bernie. We have managed to hit really both ends of the spectrum. And that's absolutely true. Yeah. So cousin Luke, Notre Dame's going 2-10. I think we'll say 2-10 is what cousin Luke is going for. And Bernie says the cornerbacks are so good they don't even need safeties. So we're just all over the place. Offensively, you mentioned receiver. I'm going to say specifically Tobias, because he is the one guy who is like on a national stage, I think is like, hey, defenders, hey, like this is a problem. Like we can't deal with him. Like of the T. Higgins kind of Justin Ross ilk for like Clemson in 2018, I think it was, where it's just like, hey, we can't. He's a problem. We need to have like multiple people on him. We need to have a plan for him. And I think he's the guy. Like if anyone on this team caught like 45 passes for like 900 yards, like I think it would be him, and I think that's a type of thing where it's like he changes the entire way you think about the offense, how to defend them, how to. Cousin Luke, if you think they're losing the Navy in the first game, they're not going to go 7-5. So that's how I feel about it.
I think you can ban him. He's just obviously he's just here to troll. So that's fine. No, honestly, whatever. I'm not going to. If he is asking like legitimate questions, that's fine. But just please ignore guys who just come in here to troll.
Yeah. All right. So so that's what I think. I think Tobias, and I think Riley Mills. That's what I'm going to go with. All right. Funk Beavis says, Greg, I've noticed sometimes you have the sniffles. Is it possibly allergic to birds? I am not. I'm not allergic to anything except for amoxicillin. That's bad. Don't give me amoxicillin. And then Jula Vaki, the amount of birds around Greg's house, how often does he need to wash his car? I think that's funny. I think it's funny just to talk about the birds. And the birds are like all under, like all in the eaves in my house. That's where they are. So they're not near my car, so I don't have to wash it at all. And it's been raining all the time. So it's, that's no problems washing the car, saving a lot of money on the car washing. And Thurman says, how do you honestly feel about the new offensive staff? This is a pretty good question.
I think we've kind of talked about it a lot, obviously, because we went over the kind of like the coaching carousel stuff all the time. But I think, you always got to wait and see, right? It's always TBD with all these guys, but I think on paper, Joe Rudolph is a really good hire. And I think he'll do well with the material he has at Notre Dame. I think he did a really good job at Wisconsin. I think one of the things, obviously, that he did really well is that he helped develop guys that, he evaluated and developed guys that maybe had pieces of being great and then turn them into NFL players. Right. Yeah. And that's something that I think is, something that, is a huge feather in his cap. And I think one of the things too, that you could say with Wisconsin and from the time that he played there as a player, and then when he was there too, is like unit strength. They were like good across the board. Like they were just like known for being like good across the board and like really playing well as a unit. So I think on paper it's a good hire. And then I think Gino Guidugli, like I think, based on what he did at Cincinnati, I think it's, a good hire, especially if you're only looking for a guy who's going to just coach quarterbacks and not be the coordinator. And especially a guy who has coordinator experience. I think that's a good thing. Obviously Marcus Freeman has a relationship with him too. So that helps. And with Jared Parker, you just don't know, right? You don't know. You don't know. I'm certainly impressed with everything he said and how he's presented himself this spring. But like a lot of guys win the press conference and it's not about that, right? It's about how the offense looks this fall on Saturdays and how are they going to deal with adversity? How are they going to deal in certain situations? What's he going to, how is he going to be as a third down coordinator? It's easy when things are going well and you're scripting well and everything's going great. And it's easy to call plays then. Well, how are you going to look when it's like, we really need this play here? I'm going to dial something up. And I think that's one of the things that you could probably say with Tommy Rees, just did a really good job with a lot of that stuff, right? Where you're like, man, Notre Dame really needs a play here. And he did a good job scheming stuff on third downs and in situations to get plays, right? And to keep drives alive. So how How's he going to do with that? I don't know. We'll see. And I think it's important. I think Notre Dame obviously needs him to hit the ground running.
Yeah.
Like they need to be good. Maybe not immediately, like whatever, but they need to figure it out easily within the first month, right? They need to figure it out. They get, he can't be someone who's like at the end of the season, you're like, well, he's still learning or whatever. It's like, no, they can't have that. They can't have that. If that's what people are going to say at the end of the season, then it wasn't a good hire, right? So I think you're going to judge them based on kind of like everything they've done. And there's been a lot of guys who have been like never called plays before or have been like, first time hires or inexperienced, and they've been awesome. And then there's obviously been some guys who are like, maybe this spot's too big for him. Look at the guy, Clemson, right? And Streeter. And he was the guy who it's like, now he gets his chance. Well, I mean, he got replaced right away. He didn't get the job done. So we'll see which one of those guys he is.
Yeah. Like, how do you respond to, a game against like Ohio State when every play is important, when every play matters? How do you respond when you're down 7-0 to Stanford, in the end of the first quarter? And it's like, oh, everything we kind of practiced isn't really working. Like, where do we go from here? Like that sort of thing, right? And you can't know. And that's the risk with him, right? And that's just the way it goes. And look, we got really frustrated at times with Tommy Rees, and he's a guy that's at Alabama now, So it's like, I think a lot of the time you're going to point to, it's like, well, Jared Parker, was a mistake and this sort of thing. Play callers. When are Notre Dame fans ever completely happy with the play calling? It's just never, right? That's not a thing. It's just at some point he will be judged on these things like everyone else, whether it's a bad hire or not. Look, are they explosive? Are they putting up points a game? What's their success rates and that sort of thing? Are they running schemes that are conducive to getting the most out of your talent? Like those are the things they'll be judged on. I think EK makes a good point in that, gone from a B- offensive staff to a B. Hartman is going to make it look like an A this season. And that's the thing about Hartman. It's like they should be good because you have really good pieces,
Yeah.
And that hasn't always been the case. Westward Manor Films asks, is there a certain magic to being a strong play caller, or is it not as difficult as we imagine? I assure you it is much more
difficult. Very difficult. It's way more difficult than anyone who's looking at a couch being like,
it is very hard. Trust me.
As we always used to say, call the good plays.
It is very hard.
Come on, man. Why don't you call the good plays?
Yeah. All right. Woes to God says, hypothetically, Notre Dame takes in 3 chancers between now and the start of fall camp. With what 3 positions would you want them to see take?
I mean, I guess if we're talking like guys who are starter level transfers, then I would say safety, nose tackle, and guard. Like, I think so. Those positions, I think if you're going to do that, like if you're just taking guys just to take guys, I think you just take whatever, right? If you're like looking at depth or whatever, like that's fine. But also too, you don't know if like there's going to be an injury in spring where it's like, well, now we have to address this, know, like, so I think that's always something where, where you might even have to just address a number situation. Yeah. But if you're looking at like, hey, we want to get guys that we think can start, I think those 3 spots.
Yeah, I agree. No notes. I think that's absolutely correct. All right, let's go to Mobster. What needs to happen for Notre Dame's D-line to turn into a top 25 unit this fall? Is that a realistic expectation with the talent on hand?
I mean, I think they were top 25 last year for sure. Like, I mean, top 20, but that's not what the expectations.
I think he means be. Top 25. I mean, okay, so
I mean, it's tough. It's like you can't really like measure
this is what they've been just on the F+, I believe. Just their defense as a whole. I think they've been 2018 was really good. Okay.
No, 2019 was like the best defense they've had in F+ in the last whatever 4 or 5 years or whatever. That was the best defense. And
let's say 2018, 2019 level. Let's say that.
I mean, they need a lot of young guys to develop, right? They need a lot of these guys that kind of Al Golden was talking about yesterday when he was, speaking with the media. They need guys like Ford and Burnham and Tui Halamaka and, Anya, right? Like they need those guys to become guys. Like that's the difference, because you have to have depth. You have to have a situation where obviously you need your top players to play like elite players, right? You need, like, if Botello becomes like, oh yeah, he's like a double-digit sack guy or close to it, or like, incredible pressure rates, and he's doing a great job. Well, that's great, but what happens when he's not on the field? Because he can't play 70 plays in a game. Yeah. So, and I think one of the things when you've seen when Notre Dame's had a really good defensive line, they've been able to, they're deep, right? They're deep. And it's like, it's not like on third down, teams aren't just being like, okay, we only got to worry about Foskey, right? Or, because if that's where they're at, then that's going to be a problem. And that's one of the things with that, like, why that 2019 team was so unique, because it's like, well, they lost Hayes and they lost Aquara, and they still had, like, okay, we can still play Kareem, Ogundeji, and Jameer Jones on third down. And they were still, like, awesome with the pass rush, right? So it's just how it is. You need multiple guys. And that's what makes, like, one of the things that makes Georgia so good is that just they're so deep. They come at you in waves. And all of a sudden you're like, yeah, obviously, like, a Roquan Smith type is going to be a difference maker guy who can make, like, big plays. Obviously, like the Jalen Carters, the Davises, those guys can make, like, game-changing plays. But also there's just other plays in the course of the game where you're just like, oh, this just random dude just, like, made this play that just was, like, got them off the field on third down. And he's like their fifth best guy, like, or sixth best D lineman. Like, that makes a difference. So that's the main thing. I think it's just developing that depth, because you're just never going to be like 2015 is a perfect example of, like, Sheldon Day was like All-American, had an All-American caliber season, just a totally disruptive. Aguara really took a nice step and had a big season there. Isaac Rochelle was, good player. Jerron Jones, I mean, he was hurt most of that year or whatever, right? But they, they had decent enough play there at one time. They didn't have any depth. So it was like, if those guys weren't making plays, then they had nobody, right? And that was, I mean, forget about the part with BVG or whatever, but that was a huge problem with that defense, is that they didn't have the depth at that time.
Yeah. What did EK's asking what Tyson Ford weighed in at?
I can't remember what it was, but it was like, I think it was like 290-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was 290. So that's exactly what you kind of want.
That'll work.
Yeah, for, like, a guy going into, his second year. He was on campus obviously early last year. He was probably like 260-ish or something when he first arrived. Like, and was obviously an end in high school, and he's making that transition. It is a significant transition. Like, as we kind of talked about last week, it's totally different feeling in there. And then I think you could see what Golden was saying was, like, yesterday about him was, he needs to kind of be consistent. And I think that's with all those young guys, right? That's what you're getting at. And, like, and people say, like, is the light going to turn on? Everyone is things going to click for him? And it's really never an overnight thing. It's just something that it's just got to come with time and just whatever. And then all of a sudden it just becomes second nature, and then guys are doing it. So we'll see. I mean, I think it's really hard for, like, a second year guy to be a difference maker guy. So it's just like, it's got to be a slow and steady growth, and hopefully we see that.
Yeah. All right. Jabosky says, best chance at safety. Who are we looking good for? I believe he's looking for a 2024 class. And it's kind of tough. I had to ask Matt this. I know they're in for Marquise Gallegos, who is a California kid. He went to Chaminade High School. Coincidentally, I actually returned a touchdown against Chaminade back in my day for a touchdown or a kickoff.
Kickoff. Wow.
Oh, okay. Yeah, dude, no doubt. Come on now. Oh, yeah. Come on now.
Squib kick, or no, this is a real kickoff return.
Jamie.
I gotta get it a shot here.
Jamie, please. Yeah. People stop kicking to me, Jamie. That's what it was. It was like rocket, man. You kick me a couple times, and then that's enough. All right, so but yeah, so he's been around. You know, he's visited a few times. I don't think with any of these guys there's like a ton of juice, right? So Matt gave me a bunch of names. Davis Andrews was another one who is probably the best chance at this point. I know Notre Dame's in on Kennedy Urlacher out of Arizona, Brian Urlacher's son. To me, that's very much like the Nico Fertitta kind of player. It's like you could take him but I don't know. I don't really see it right now. Maybe that can change as he, gets older, as a senior year or whatever. But I think those are the guys that we're looking at right now, with Gallegos being the one that intrigues me the most. So that's kind of where it's at, but there's not like a ton of good traction there. Gallegos I think they got to get him on campus more. He's got to see it more. He's got to keep visiting. So that's where it is.
Yeah, well, he's coming on campus soon.
Right.
So
right. But I think even beyond that, like I think it's just kind of the long game, and that's fine. I'm just saying, like, as of today, I don't know how close any of these guys are to picking their schools or whatever. I mean, Chaminade, Western Manor Film says Chaminade feels like a tough pull. It is, but it's a Catholic school, right? It's a private school, so that's good.
And they were in on him early. I think that's always important. They were in on him early. I really like Gallegos. I think he's great ball skills. He's really good instincts. He's got kind of like that receiver mentality. He tracks it really, really well. Just makes a ton of plays. He can like really like get downhill in the alley and fill there too. I think he's a really good prospect. He would be out of all the guys that I think they have a good shot with. I like him the most. I'm with you on Kennedy Urlacher. I don't see it on film. Doesn't pop for me. Think he's better a linebacker. He's certainly like a physical kid.
Like Nico Fertitta.
Yeah. And so I don't know. I mean, I think he's a guy playing out of position. I think he's a linebacker. So if they say, they're going to take him as a linebacker and they're taking him as kind of like a project linebacker, I mean, it'd be a little bit more understandable to me, but I don't see him as like a guy playing deep, and I think Davis Andrews is a really intriguing guy to me. He's from Utah. I mean, he makes an incredible amount of plays, incredible amount of production. Yes. Yeah. I would want to know his speed, and because he doesn't jump out as like super fast on film. So I would, when you see that, I'd like want to know his times and stuff. If he's got times, like, I think that would be important, or some of his like athletic testing. But I think as just a pure football player, he's really good. And I think if he has the kind of athletic testing that you're looking for, then I think he's probably way underrated. And, I would say he's a kind of a high 3-star kid, but could be like a 4-star. And I mean, they just offer that Paul Menke kid. I liked his film a lot. I like the size and frame. I think he's, got good ball skills. He's really a guy who kind of like, not afraid to kind of stick his nose in it. He's good recognition driving the football. Probably like a little bit underrated. I think DeJuan Lane, who is, I'm not sure where his fit is. I kind of thought he was maybe more of a space backer, but oh my God, he makes a ton of plays, and he's like, really good blitzer, long speed. The Kingston Lopa kid, man, he's just like the cleats dudes when he hits them. And I think he's really intriguing as a DB with his ball skills, and he's long. Right. And he's really, really long, and he's got kind of like, I always like to, when you see a DB, a guy who probably projects a DB, and when you see him on offense and you're like, this guy plays like he loves defense, he's like wants it after the catch, and he's kind of got that mentality. I think he's another guy who's like really like kind of underrated. But yeah, I think if you're looking at like one, I don't think it's another situation too, right? Kind of like O-line. Not a lot of like the elite safeties in this class. It's not loaded. It's always hard to find good safeties in most classes, right? But they're definitely not in on a Peyton Bowen type.
I mean, unfortunately, Bronte Johnson was their guy, and A, he wanted to be a receiver for some reason, and B, it just doesn't look like that's going to work out.
Yeah,
various reasons.
Okay, and I honestly too, and Bronte Johnson, I think physically you're like, oh, this guy has like the goods, right? But he's another guy like where you're like, his physical traits translate better than how he plays right now. He is a better receiver than he is a DB, like quite a bit, in my opinion. Right now, it's not to say that he maybe probably has a higher ceiling as a safety. I don't know. I mean, obviously his kind of ranking has been adjusted, but I was always like, when he was like, oh, he's like a 5-star, I was like, what? No. Like, and I mean, and I've obviously seen him in person too. He worked out at Irish Invasion also too. Like, I mean, it could have been just one day. He really struggled to catch football that day. Really struggled. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Rajon, it was a 92-yarder. Yeah. Listen, your boy, 3 kickoff return touchdowns and a punt return touchdown. Okay. Don't sleep on it now. Don't sleep on it. Your boy could move. All right. Lucky Luke Y. Domer. On a scale of 1 to 10, how happy you're going to feel when Notre Dame offense averages over 38 points per game this season and Notre Dame goes 11-1 and makes the playoffs? First of all, if they're all that, then what's the 1 for? If that's all the case, then why is it 1 loss? Tell me. Where's the loss in that? Maybe they give up. Maybe our boy in the chat earlier was right. They drop one to Navy early and then run the table. But I mean, yeah, that would be great. I mean, obviously, right? I mean, that would be. I think Luke K.Y. Domer's just making a prediction. That's fine. I think they could. I don't think there's anything that says that this couldn't happen. Could happen.
It could happen. I think one of these things too is like, as like, obviously I'm not just sitting there as like a fan just being like enjoying it. I mean, I'll be 10 out of 10 happy if they go 11-1, because I mean, it's a lot easier to do the job when the team is good.
Yeah.
And when they're playing well. Generally, like, people who follow the team are in a way better mood. So that helps too. So yeah, I mean, sign me up for 11-1 if they do it, and I think they got a shot for sure.
Yeah. So very happy. That would be great. USMA 95. Any thoughts on a new group of football staff GA analysts recently announced? Do you think we have enough support from the administration in this area, or is Notre Dame still a good bit behind other Power 5 schools? Which off-field investments do you think Notre Dame needs to make? I don't think they're a good bit behind other Power 5 schools on average. I think they are probably a good bit behind, like, the Georgias of the world. The SEC just generally, right? I think Notre Dame, I saw they were in the 40s in terms of staff, just like all in. And I want to say a lot of those SEC schools were in the 60s. You'd have to do kind of like some sort of study on, is there, I don't want to say diminishing returns, but is there just like a point where it kind of doesn't, adding people just kind of doesn't matter? It's kind of like how people say, like, over a certain amount of money in your bank account, nothing really changes, right? So it's like, if you have anything over like $10 million, like everything above that, you're not really changing your lifestyle, right? You just have more money to have it, which is great, right? And so look, you have some more support staff. Is it really making a difference above, 45 people? You'd have to have a study on that. As far as the off-field investments, listen, I'm firmly of the belief that there is no reason that Notre Dame isn't like top of college football in facilities, in nutrition, in recovery. I mean, Matt talked a lot about this stuff on the latest Power Hour. He's just talking about, like, look, they're not great in a lot of these areas, right? Folding chairs in the goop, right? And at some point, and there's always going to be someone who says something like, well, doesn't really matter, or recruits don't mention it, or whatever. Look, either it's really good or it isn't, and at some point it has to be like, well, recruits don't mention it. Recruits don't mention a lot of things that actually make a difference to them, right? And if anyone has ever bought a house or looked at a house or looked at something where it's like, you can have a list of things that you want, but a lot of the time what flips that tips the scale for you is something that you didn't think of. Something that is added that you say, you know what, I like that. I want to go in for this thing, right? So that's kind of how I feel about it, in terms of, like, I think Notre Dame needs to, I think the Goog fix it. I think the nutrition thing, that you got to get more in that area, more recovery for athletes, more support for athletes, right? It's not, and look, it's not like they don't do any of these things. They do. And those people do a good job. Do more of it. Yeah. These guys, they all talk about how hard it is to live in South Bend, and make it better for them. That's how I feel about it. So your thoughts, Jamie?
First of all, I love the house analogy. Shout out Love It or List It, HGTV, big show on HGTV. And it is one of those things where it's like must-haves or whatever, right? People always do it, but then it's like some of the stuff isn't must-have, but some of the stuff is. Like, that's usually the difference when people are choosing a house or choosing to stay or leave on those shows, even though, insider tip there, found out a lot of those shows, they already decide that they just want the renos, and then that's why the thing. So just so you know, but I do think, like, it is something like that. What Matt said specifically about, like, the training, like, / like recovery thing, like, area, like, and facilities, making that better, that is important. It's really important.
Yeah,
it's super important. It's like one of these things. So right now, so similar to kind of like what was going on with the US women's soccer team, and they were having all these experiences where they were like, they weren't getting equitable pay in terms of, and not just pay, but just like support, right, of what comparative to what they needed, right? Compared to the men, even though they were more successful than the men. So it's the same thing in Canadian women's soccer right now. And one of the things is, like, they can't even, like, afford to get full-time physio there. And it's like, I mean, that's a joke, right? That's a joke that they can't have that. And it's not that whatever, that's a deal with Notre Dame, but it's just like, that's something that can actually give you, like, a significant edge, right? That can help. Like, that is going to help your entire team to have that part of it better, right? Like, more important than getting a water slide in your facility, or like whatever, or like, here's a basketball court where the guys can just hang around, whatever. Like, that stuff it's nice, whatever, cool, whatever, right? It's just like, you're looking at, MTV Cribs, that's cool. But if I'm buying a house, I'm like, I want to know, it's like, well, they got a big kitchen. There's an island for here. There's stuff that you're going to use, right? That you're going to use that's going to make it better for you. So, and Bernie says, Irish top 5 in nation. That has to count for something. That's got nothing to do with this question, though. Like, I mean, that Notre Dame is going to win in that area, but let's face it, some of these guys too are picking it because of football, and they're picking it and that's a big part of it, right? And if you think that, like, if everyone else has all these other little things that are better, that might seem like little things, but it adds up to something big later on, right? So I think that matters, right? And I think so that's kind of important. I mean, in terms of, like, the new group of football staff, like the GAs and analysts and stuff, like, I mean, obviously a lot of these guys are, like, inexperienced, have come from like kind of smaller programs, and they're like guys who are rising, right? They're guys who are going to, they're not guys they're not like retreads, right? They're guys that are like, young, hardworking guys who are on their way up and going to kind of rise with their careers at the beginning of their careers, or roughly at the beginning of their careers. And I think you look at what Notre Dame has done there, and they've done a tremendous job, because there's been so many guys, especially recently, who have gone on and gotten like full-time like jobs at like FBS schools, like position coaches and whatever, or moved on to the NFL and had opportunities too. And that kind of thing, you don't get that unless you're hiring good people, right? They're not just going to get that next opportunity. So I think they've done a good job with that, and a good job identifying those coaches and developing those coaches. That's part of the gig too, right? And I think, in terms of how all these new guys are, usually when I'm like go down there, I'll like go down and talk to some people, and kind of like I'll hear about like, oh, they really like this new this new DB analyst or whatever. They really like this guy or whatever. This guy's really like kind of impressive. He's going to be a star. He's going to be something. That's one thing I'm interested in, to going in on Saturday and kind of finding out, because there's going to be guys that, you hear about and you're like, oh, this guy's going to be something. And then those are the kind of guys that maybe end up working back at Notre Dame one day.
Right. So Karen C in the comments, she's pointing out, I guess, pushing back a little. I guess that's a fair way to put it. So I'll just put up the comments. Actually, it's easier. The student athletes have a nutritionist, and dining halls provide an extraordinary range of healthy food. It would be nice to know exactly what they want. Do you have a comment on that? Just that right before I get to the other stuff.
Oh, no, not really. Like, I kind of always thought that was like kind of that Brian Kelly thing that he was bringing up was just like one of those lame excuses that he was.
Well, like, I think okay. So there's a difference between what's an excuse and what is, I guess, valid. Yes. The thing with Brian Kelly is that he wasn't doing the things that he needs to do on his end, right? Yeah. So it's like the rest of it just kind of doesn't matter, because like you're not doing your thing. So you need to do everything that you can on your end. And then if you want to address the Goog or the nutrition or whatever, the food training table and all that other stuff, then we can get to that. But first of all, you need to do your stuff. But for me, Marcus Freeman doesn't complain about anything. He never makes an excuse like that. He never goes out. He's never been on background, a leak talking about, I'm not happy with XYZ. He never does that. He always just says, look, it is what it is. I have to work under the parameters that are put before me, and I need to excel here, and I'm going to do that, right? I think it is fair to say, like, the athletes have a nutritionist. Now, to me, this is kind of like, and I don't want to disparage, and when I said it before, I do want to be careful. It's like, I don't want to disparage the people who are working for university now, probably doing a very good job as well as they can, right? To me, it's along the lines of like when they had the darn it, her name is escaping me right now, but the sports psychologist who Brian Kelly brought in, Melky.
Yeah, I think
no.
I'm can't remember. She's no longer with the program.
She's no longer with the program, and it was like, we don't need that. We have.
She's mostly for Brian Kelly, anyways.
We have support on staff, right? And it's like, look, that's fine, right? You have we have people on campus right now who can do the job, and that's fine. Okay, so you don't want to do that, fine, but like, why not do that? Why not have someone dedicated to the football team? Why not have someone dedicated to the women's basketball team, the soccer team, whoever? Because here's the other thing, Jamie. Every fall,
Dr. Amber Selking. Thank you, Mitchell.
Selking, thank you. Every fall around December, January, we hear about all these guys want to transfer. All these guys want to go out. And a lot of them never do. Yeah. Right? They don't. But it's like, we know that it is difficult as a Notre Dame student athlete. We know that, right? We've heard it over and over and over again. I think these guys need more support. And they are college football players. They are. It is major college football. Okay, they fly over the country. You know, they fly over the world. You know, they're going to Ireland. Right? Like they're not regional. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry to just interject here, but just I think the one thing is, you know, and Karen, and whatever, there's certainly something there with like, yeah, these guys are treated like celebrities and whatever. But I mean, and I agree, like maybe these guys don't need to be get all of these perks. And it's like, well, the reason they're able to give all these perks is because they make the university millions upon millions of dollars. It wouldn't happen without that. So, and the players or the teams you're recruiting against, they offer this stuff. So if you don't have that, and like I said, yeah, the water slide or whatever, that crap doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. But the other stuff, like having like a better training table, or like having, you know, better rehab areas and all that, like more like a better rest and recovery areas and all that kind of stuff, having like a bigger goog so you can have that kind of stuff, having like, you know, more comfortable chairs so these guys feel comfortable and can come and watch film, whatever, like that does matter. It absolutely does matter. Like it's important. Some of it is a little overblown, but like not all of it, especially because if you just know, you're like, okay, you're already making the hard choice to go to Notre Dame because you know that school's going to be harder. But then you're like, yeah, and then also school's going to be harder. And then we also don't get this. And then we don't get that. And we know that, like, that stuff matters. And all the other kind of stuff, like, it's like it does become a hindrance to you landing a thing. And forget about even NIL and all that stuff, right? Like, that's just, it's a reality. It's a reality.
Right. And Karen, you say, if that is the case, Notre Dame is not for them. That's the point, is that a ton of athletes have decided, no, Notre Dame is not for me. Then that's the point, right? It's so, and it's, I don't think these kids, the kids don't want to be treated like celebrities. That is not the case. First of all, they just have it be commensurate with other programs.
Yes.
You know, that's all it is. Like, it's not, and it's not like no one knows about this, right? It's something that's beyond, like, we wouldn't have this conversation if Matt didn't report on it, right? People report on it so we know, you know, that's the point. It's not that they want to be paraded around like celebrities. That's not the deal for a lot of them too. That's not what they want. Like Ian Book, for example, he was not like trying to be all, you know, I want to be, he doesn't even like giving interviews. He was very kind in talking to me. Right. I've talked to other Notre Dame players. It's like, do you want to come on the show? It's like, not really. I don't want the visibility like that. A lot of them don't want that. What they do want is they do want to be supported on campus for the thing that they're doing for the university. The football team does a lot for Notre Dame and their image and their brand. Right. And that involves the players. Okay. So that's just the way it is, right? And it's like that at a lot of places, right? That's where this whole NIL thing comes, where it's like, look, I understand, like, it makes everyone uncomfortable, and it made me uncomfortable for a little bit. But when we get into it and you really look at it and you say, okay, these guys do a lot, and the university makes millions and millions of dollars based on what these players are doing, just support them is all I'm saying. Give them the best facilities, give them the best support in all facets. That's all I'm saying.
Or just competitive to the best. It doesn't even have to be the best, just competitive.
Yeah,
that's
just
all
competitive.
Yeah.
All right. We'll move on. All right. Dielemeyer 7 says, if you could change the outcome of a single play in any Notre Dame game over the last 10 years, what play would you choose and what would be the impact?
I mean, I think two ones really stand out, and it's obviously Florida State.
2014.
The offensive pass interference, just ridiculous that was called. And because I think that's like one of the greatest what ifs, because that could have totally changed the trajectory of, you know, Everett Golson's Agreed. That would have changed the trajectory of that season. That's something, Bush push was with not in the last 10 years. So that's why it's not on there, right? For those guys, he said the last 10 years. So yeah, that is something, because I really think Brian Kelly hadn't won one of those games, especially on the road. I'm not including the Oklahoma game. People were like, oh, the Oklahoma. It was different. Florida State was number one. They were the reigning national champion. Jameis Winston. There was like so much hype going into that game. That could have just really, I think that it helps flip recruiting and stuff. That was a big game. And then things obviously fell off the rails at the end there, right? And I think that was big. And then the other one is, 2015 Clemson, the 2-point conversion. I think that's just one of those plays that if obviously that would have tied it, right? It would have tied it and not whatever. But let's say they get the 2-point conversion and they win, right? And they win that game. It's the same kind of situation, right? Brian Kelly never won those games. You're in that game in a big road, a hostile environment. I think it's kind of the thing that galvanizes the team. I think that 2015 team probably ends up going to the playoff that year. Probably ever runs the table. They probably don't even lose that Stanford game really later on. And maybe then the 2016 team doesn't have. And then obviously there's this, whole ripple effect, because they probably needed that in a lot of ways in terms of reboot. But I just do think when it all comes back to me, it all comes back to recruiting, right? It all comes back to recruiting. And those, I think, would have been just, sometimes you say like, does one game really matter? I think it could have in those two instances. I think it really could have.
Yeah. Those are good choices. And I figured you would go for them. And so not to rehash. So I picked one that is really just kind of a prognostication. And one thing that I don't think that people realize or just kind of consider, I guess, is how much one play can affect the way a whole game goes. And it can get things going on the wrong foot. And so I was thinking about the 2020 ACC title game when Notre Dame gets kickoff and they go down and kick a field goal. And then Trevor Lawrence throws a pick. It gets tipped by Drew White, and Kyle Hamilton picks it off. And they're driving down again. And they get down there within inside the 10-yard line, and they don't make it on third down, and they kick another field goal and he misses, right? Still 3-0. And then Clemson hits the big play after that, and you're off to the races. They're up 7-3. I think if Notre Dame scores on that third down play, and it's 10-0 Notre Dame, and it's like, man.
They're squeezed. It's tight on that.
It gets
Clemson.
tight.
It's getting very tight.
Because then you start to think like, hey, this team already did this to us. Yeah. They beat us, and now we have Trevor Lawrence and we have all these guys back, and they're doing it again. It's 10-0 again. What's that about? So even if Clemson then goes down and scores, like you're still up. You're still up, and then you go into the next drive and Notre Dame misses the fourth down play, right? And so it was 7-3. It's like if you're at 10-7 at that point, you're still building on them. Like you said, it gets tight. They start to feel a certain kind of way. And I think just a little thing like that, it's just like you miss the third down and then you shank the field goal. And then you go, oh, man, like that's no good. We just wasted it. Now we're only up 3-0, and now they're winning, and I think that mentally changes. So I think the other ones you have are more obvious and they're more likely. I think mine is a little bit different, but that's one that I kind of think about. And it's just an illustration of how like something early can flip the way a game kind of, comes out. So that was one I thought about. Silverback says, what one question asked by the other one would guarantee a rant? Sorry. And sorry if already anyone asked, who is hit and who is hustle? I think Jamie's hit and I am hustle. That's how I view it. Do you view it differently, Jamie?
I think we both could be hit and hustle, but
okay.
I mean, sure, I'm hit. Sure. Yeah. You're hustle. I know you, he is the hustle. He does the hustle. That's for sure. Greg works hard for all this stuff. guarantee a rant. I mean, we already had a couple rants based on the facility stuff. So I guess maybe that. I mean, I think for me, it's people just questioning. I think like kind of like unfounded stuff about coaches. And I realize it usually comes from somebody else that is talking about coaches, and basically it's their brand to rip on coaches and say that they're smarter than them, which whatever, that's their brand. But I don't think like I don't know. I don't think that's one of those things that like a lot of times I think like I kind of said about in Six Thoughts today about them taking Anthony Knapp. It's totally fair to question like being like, should Notre Dame take this guy? Look at his offer list, look at his ranking, whatever, right? Like coaches aren't infallible. Like you can question them, right? You can question them. That's part of being a fan, being critical. That is like, if you're just one of these guys who just everything is great, then it's like, well, then, I mean, you're a different kind of fan, right? Like, if you're someone too, who everything is bad and everyone is bad and this person's bad, or like all these coaches suck or whatever, that'll usually get me on a rant. If someone's like saying like, man, this guy sucks. And it's like, well, why does he suck? Tell me why. Right. And if you can't give me a good reason why, then I'm going to go on a rant.
Yeah. I think any Kyle Hamilton slander will probably get me going. Like you say something about like Kyle on offense, that'll make me upset. I think EK brings up one. He brought up one earlier, but safety blitzing safeties from depth really fires me up. Don't like it. It never works. It's just not good. You're telegraphing. You're never getting home. Even if he comes free, you're never getting there. Didn't work with Kyle Hamilton, so don't do it with like Brandon Joseph. That's my take on that. All right, Domer123. What do you think helps the 2023 Irish more? An elite wide receiver emerging or an elite D tackle? Can't say both. So between Tobias and Riley Mills, I would say I think Riley Mills helps more, because I think you still have a really good offense and without an elite wide receiver emerging. Who's the best wide receiver on Georgia's team? Is it Landon McConkey? Is that the deal, right? So I don't think you must have an elite wide receiver.
Man, they do have Brock Bowers is pretty elite.
He's good, but he's not a wide receiver. So I don't think you need it, but I do think you do need that elite D tackle. And so that's what I think. What do you think, James?
I was going to say wide receiver, even though I don't disagree with anything you said. Because I think they don't have Michael Mayer this year. So they need somebody in the passing game that is going to be the guy. Yeah. So for me, I would lean wide receiver, but I certainly think, Domer 1, 2, 3, make an argument. We can't say both. I would say both if you let us say both. Yeah.
It's funny how you picked the receiver and I picked I picked the DB or the D tackle. Chris ND 92. I think we're getting close to being finished here. Lots of ND legends or sons are being recruited because of them, not their fathers. Is that really the case? Please rank the current Notre Dame football legacy current recruits. BK recruited lots of celebrity sons. Were they similarly recruited for their abilities or celebrity? Well, let me go over the legacies. So obviously Bryce Young is one. He is very much being recruited because he's very good. And Mosley's son. He's also very good. And then there's Jerome Bettis Jr.'s son. I think Jerome Bettis Jr. I think is he a 2025?
He is a 2025. Yes.
Okay. So CFB Hurt says Ronnie Pallas III was recruited on his own merits.
Yeah.
That's probably one, right? And so you have him, Montgomery Van Gorder. I think there's a mix. I think this year it's definitely like those guys are the goods, and so they're going after them. But you do see that.
Yeah, I don't. Obviously, like whatever. I don't want to get into Ronnie Pallas slander or anything like that. But like,
But that's kind of different to me, right? Like it's not like he was taken over other players.
Yeah. It'd be like different if they were like, our quarterback in our class is Ronnie Powell. It is a totally different. You're right. It's a totally different situation. And I will say that, I mean, the celebrity kids thing, I was trying to think about that. Who, John Bon Jovi's kid?
Yeah.
Because that was it.
Yeah.
Who else? Who are the other celebrity kids? I don't remember anybody else. Am I totally missing?
I don't know.
I mean, you could say, I mean, he's not a celebrity, but I guess you could say like Nico Fertitta. I mean, because of like the UFC, whatever. Yeah. But I mean, certainly I don't know, like if he would have got an offer from Notre Dame, if there wasn't that kind of connection, maybe not, right? And certainly too, like the connection to Bishop Gorman and all that kind of thing. Like I think that probably played a role in it. Torrey Hunter and Corey Robinson, but like, I mean, Torrey Hunter Jr.
He was like a mid forced. I mean, he was like a top
incredible what
player.
if he was if he was, I think if he had come in healthy the whole time, his career
he had a totally terrible injury. I mean, broke his femur. I mean, that's tough. That's it broke a freak way too. I mean, that was tough.
And I think that also too, just okay. Here's one thing: that Texas game, no targeting on that Torrey Hunter was one of the worst no targeting. And like people can complain about targeting. The fact that wasn't called was disgusting. Yeah. It was such a dirty play. It changed literally. Like I think Torrey Hunter Jr. was like, I'm not going to play football anymore because of that.
Yeah, totally.
Because of that play. And that's why he went to baseball. I think he'd probably be in the NFL right now, to be honest. And honestly too, that probably changed the whole course of the season because he's easily the wide receiver one for that team and would have been way better that whole year. He's one of the guys too that I would say like in practice, in especially like 2015 heading into it, there was like Will Fuller and him. Like he was that dude. Like he was going to be. I think he really could have his whole career because of injuries. Like obviously that concussion in the broken femur, it totally changes. He was like a very, very highly thought of recruit and would have been, I think, exceptional player for Notre Dame. And it's really unfortunate. And I think even Corey Robinson. I mean, Corey Robinson had talent. Yeah, I think it wasn't like I mean, I don't think it was like a total like charity take or anything like that. He had talent and certainly like he played and contributed at Notre Dame. Wasn't a star, right? Wasn't a star. Maybe some people overhyped him a little bit after, he had like a pretty decent 2015 season. But I mean, I don't know, like that's it. Like those are whatever. Like, I don't think that I mean, he played and started at Notre Dame. Like there's a lot of guys that don't, right? Like, I don't think he would have, I don't think it was a bad take or a bad decision to go after him at all.
Yeah. All right, last question of the day. ND Tom 88. You can add one player in college football to Notre Dame roster. Who is it?
Probably Caleb Williams. It's got to be. He's just one of these guys. He all of a sudden
he's incredible. He really is.
There's so few guys that come along that really can like change the trajectory of a team. And obviously he won the Heisman last year. It was pretty obvious, but people want to give Lincoln Riley, and Lincoln Riley's obviously a very good coach and a very good offensive coach, but there's zero chance they even get a sniff of being a playoff contender if anyone other than Caleb Williams is their quarterback. That's just a fact. He was that good. Notre Dame would have had like 10 sacks in that game. Yeah. And go back and watch most of the games. That would have been the situation with a lot of the games and those are just like drive killers and stuff too. He was just so exceptional. So, I mean, I would put him in the like Lamar Jackson class of just like, oh my God, this guy he just really just completely elevated that team. Cause like those Louisville teams, go back on those Louisville teams and see how many like NFL guys they had on those teams. They didn't have a ton. He was that difference maker. Like he was phenomenal. So like if you get, he's one guy too. I mean, it's easy to say like you get somebody and then all of a sudden it changes the trajectory like of where you're at and you get these guys. But like he literally would like, I think if you put him on almost any team, it's like, well, they have a chance to win the national championship just because of him.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's been like on Twitter, a lot of the draft guys, like they post like the all 22 of like USC stuff, just like for fun. And some of the plays that he makes are just mind-boggling. Like I can't believe he's making some of these throws. So, and getting out of the trouble he does. So he's just incredible. I'd have to take him, even though they have Sam Hartman. I'd still have to take it.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. That is it. We have finished it. I told you, Jamie. When I saw him coming in, I was like, dude, there's no way we're doing this in an hour. So thank you, everyone, for being a part of the show and for hanging in there. Everyone hung in and did a really good job. Love the questions. Everyone did a great job with that. Thank you so much. I'm going to get this posted as a podcast, so that's going to be going up soon. If you like what you heard, hit the like, hit subscribe button, hit the notification bell. I need to talk to Jamie about what's going on for Saturday. Maybe we'll just keep our regular scheduled programming because I'm busy and I know Jamie's busy. He's probably got a bunch of write-ups from open practice, but he's going to be at open practice. So check out irishsportsdaily.com for those updates. And maybe we'll talk to you Saturday. Maybe we'll talk to you next week. But whatever the case may be, have a good weekend, everybody. And we will talk to you very, very soon.